Jubilee should be at the center. And I think if something is going to hit the deputy president like a ton of bricks, it is this particular matter. Yes, because we know that earlier on he brought his party together with Uhuru and the former Jubilee.
Yes.
And then they closed the door. So no other party would join the Jubilee ruling. In fact, party, they shifted from a coalition to party.
Yeah.
And at the expense of everybody else. And it was President Kenyatta and Deputy President Ruto and Jubilee. Everybody else was outside. And we know that DP was actually part of this.
Yes.
And I think that's why it's becoming very tricky now when, in fact, you see DP is not really talking that much about coalitions as such.
Yeah.
Is a little bit muted. Yeah, because generally he's an anti-coalitionist. If you could win without coalitions, that's the direction he'll go. And he's proven that in the past.
Yeah.
And I think that will come back to haunt him. Raila, on the other side, is a coalitionist. In fact, that's that is why I wanted to change the constitution through BPI, so that everybody has a seat. Every politician is a member of parliament. Every tribal kingpin is a deputy prime minister or a prime minister or deputy president or assistant deputy president or CAS or whatever it will actually be. Which of course is also the extreme that you just create all sorts of different positions, so that people can actually
feel accommodated.
Yeah, but I think what is worrying though is that some of these parties just seem to be one-man parties.
Okay.
They're not actual vehicles that can be used for inclusion. If anything, I think the big game changer is going to be whether we are getting into elections with three broad coalitions, that is the One Kenya Alliance, also standing on their own till the end.
Sure. Or
the One Kenya Alliance will fragment and join these other two, or join one group as as an entity. Right. And I think they will have a huge impact if Wiper, because they really are real parties with with representation and with some degree of regional influence. So whoever they join, they're likely to give that candidate a very big boost. And of course, the president has been working very hard to ensure that the One Kenya Alliance team join Raila. But of course, since they've been together in the NAC, or what was it called, the previous Raila alliance, and Raila didn't deliver on the promises as far as I'm concerned.
That's it, NASA.
Yeah. NASA, they're not overly enthusiastic.
Yes, that's the thing. Mr. Manyasi, do you think that would be the best option, to have One Kenya Alliance joining Raila, or Raila joining the One Kenya Alliance, being a flag bearer of in the upcoming election? Would that be key as they look towards finding a formidable alliance? All the smaller parties maybe can join in, but do you think if they manage to solidify a coalition with the One Kenya Alliance, then that is it?
Yeah, Trix, if you think about it from what I have said on this show before, is that One Kenya Alliance probably will have a serious sway in the direction that the next election will go. I say that because if they were to stay together to the end, and for example, join either camp or are joined by either camp, so to speak, then that will be the easiest to win by all means. But if they stick together, and assuming that the Raila Odinga candidature becomes stronger and stronger, and therefore denies the William Ruto camp the 50 mark, then they will determine who becomes president if they were a runoff. So that's another scenario. But a different scenario will be, and I know Raila Odinga is very good at this, because he has not announced that he's going to run for president yet. He has said that he's waiting for the voter registration to end. If by any chance Raila Odinga was to make a surprise, like the Kibaki Tosha surprise, that would be a very interesting scenario to have in the coming election, in the sense that the demonizing, for example, that the William Ruto camp has been doing on him, will then become very complicated to have, in the sense that Raila Odinga will bring his yes, and that will be complex for them, and they will need to find a different strategy to actually beat that kind of coalition, because you will now be having a person who is not a handshake candidate. You will not be blaming the person for having failed the economy, so to speak, in quotes, which I am not sure how, and you will not be also be blaming you'll not be looking at them as they have been looking at Raila Odinga from the word go. And so all these things will play a key role. And my assumption at this point in time is that it's a bit early to know exactly who is going to win the next election. It will be dependent on a lot of science and mathematics, so to speak. And I want to imagine that the crafters of the different scenarios and the different options that the candidates have a lot of consideration to make in all this. Of course, for all purposes and intents, you see that the deputy president's strategy is known. Most of the other candidates' strategies are largely unknown. And so if you think about even from the time, the choice of the running mate, there are a lot of indications that most of the aspirants will want to pick a running mate from Central. Now, if that happens, and both of them, all coalitions choose from Central, then what would be the obvious reason for the people of Central to vote for William Ruto and not for Raila Odinga, because their candidate will not be on the ballot anyway. And assuming that one of the candidates decides to ignore Mount Kenya completely and form a coalition of other tribes, then what happens to the Central Kenya region and what happens to the William Ruto candidature? So in all these aspects, there are very many dynamics that will be quite clearer towards April of next year.
And I'd like to ask you, what do you make of what Professor said? The NASA coalition did leave a bad taste in the mouths of the people, the OCA principles, as it were, right now. Do you think that would stand in the way of this possible coalition forming?
It has actually been standing in the way already, in the sense that the other coalition partners have not been keen on joining Raila Odinga because of that. I think the only other enticement or the only other motivation that might make them join him is, for example, if they were to be very clear and for sure know that on their own they are going nowhere, then they will make that consideration. And if, for example, they will also see that the William Ruto side of things is not giving them, is not accommodating other people or other coalitions, then they might only have one side to consider, and that will be a Raila Odinga side. But in my view, the person to make this negotiation probably might not be Raila Odinga. It might be the president, it could be someone else. Probably what will come out of that will be dependent largely on how that negotiation is done. Because like the NASA collapse, when Raila Odinga joined Uhuru Kenyatta in government, he technically ignored all his, the people who had fought for him. I guess he had the assumption that he didn't need them to get to where he got, which was a bad assumption, because sometimes it's not just about the people who help you, but it's about the optics. It's about the goodwill. It's about what people think about you in terms of you are able to keep friends, your ability to keep friends and to keep promises. So it's more about that than the actual numbers that people brought. So that is where he missed the point, in my view.
Okay, right. Now, Professor, you want to add something?
Definitely. Well, I mean, I think what you're saying there is that particular emphasis that if I was in OCA, this would not be the time to actually join either coalition. You really want to wait until you know, it's clear. As we just says quite clearly that you're going nowhere on your own.
Yes, and now you have
exactly, because it also it's politics, so it doesn't make sense to also join the losing side.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you might as well wait for the ground to settle nicely.
Swallow your pride,
exactly.
and decide
and make your options.
Okay, now I'd like to draw Ms. Omai. I'd like to draw your attention on page 14 of the Daily Nation this morning, and it talks about election promises. It's the cartoon editorial this morning, but I think it speaks volume about the quality of the rhetoric and the promises that are being given by politicians. Basically, this is a garbage truck that has been named election promises and has the sign of recycling, and basically churning out jobs, water, roads, etc. And the idea behind this cartoon is that everything that is coming out of politicians' mouths is just recycled rubbish from previous elections that has not been delivered yet. So my question to you is, what do you think of the quality of the promises that politicians across board are giving to Kenyans? And do you think that there's anything new or any promise in what they are saying right now?
So I think, in my view, right now, when you're searching something or when you're in the search to get something that you really, really want, sometimes you overpromise. And at this point, I think some people are showing sort of double standards, because we have seen them we have seen them in governments before. We have seen them in positions of power before. Some are still in positions of power. And the same things that are being, sold to Kenyans, the same promises being made to Kenyans are the same things that are in policies that some of the policies that we have. And it is enough to know that as Kenyans, we really have great policies, but when it comes to implementation, I think we are really failing at that. And also, when it comes to publicizing the things that the executions of those policies, we feel that some people really, and politicians, they are guilty. Politicians are really guilty of this. Yes. They ride on the things that are already happening. For instance, right now we're being told about there's a lot of conversation going on around the bottom-up economy. Mm-hmm. And this is one thing that was really stated in the Building Bridges initiative. But right now, with having put aside the Building Bridges initiative, we find that still the same things that were put in that document, when it comes to maybe issues of taxes, when it comes to issues of loans and in creating an enabling environment for businesses, these are the same issues that people are campaigning with. Mm-hmm. So you sit down and wonder if this thing was to be anchored in law, but the people who shouted opposed it the loudest are the same people going with the same narratives, the same stories to the people, telling them, once I get into power as your president, I will introduce a constituency fund. There was a proposal in the Building Bridges initiative, and allow me to use the Building Bridges initiative because this was one of the most, it was a document that had most of the, these promises now in writing, mm-hmm. something that we had not had before. So this same issue, when you come to the funds, the constituency fund, we have a replication of the same, which is the CDF, which is the Constituency Development Fund. And what was proposed in the BBI was with the increment from 15% to 35% of the building of the national resources, like the money going to the counties. The first people to shout that it is not possible to have this money increased to 35%, mm-hmm. are the same people promising Kenyans that once they get into positions of power or they become president, they will introduce 120 million that will be used to surface loans, to surface businesses for small enterprises for people at the grassroots. So I fail to wonder why, when it comes to anchoring it in law, it becomes a problem, and it becomes an issue of people expanding the government to accommodate themselves. But when it comes to rallies and it comes to verbal issues, and we know if something is not anchored in law, it cannot be enforced. And the reason why these recommendations were there was because if this is what you want, if your concern is to uplift the poor person, if your concern is to create an enabling environment for Wanjiku, we need to see it anchored in law. We need to see it in policies, and that is the only way, because of the what has been happening, promises, and then afterwards we see nothing, being done. That was the only sure way. So for me, I feel these are empty promises. Because number one, you're sitting in positions of power and influence, but you're not doing anything with that. Okay. So you come here and tell our youths that you will create more jobs, you bring water, you will ensure the road networks are okay, but that is the same things that are being done right now by the government. The President Uhuru Kenyatta's government is really big on roads right now, but you see the same people saying, this government is not working. This government is not looking at Wanjiku. And roads are very important because these are the ways through passes for even the farmers in the rural areas. So when we have expanded bypasses, when we have, like the way we are seeing bypasses all over Nairobi, it becomes very easy to access places. When you go to Mandera and Isiolo, the road networks are very well, very nice and well accomplished. So if these things, the things being done right now, for me, I would really say, if you cannot concentrate on what is really on the table right now, if we are not seeing progress and we are not seeing you championing really and working towards working towards, finishing and especially right now, the Big Four agenda.
Yes.
I feel this is a really, these are promises that would really be empty because you have not done it yet.
Okay, Professor.
Yes.
Right. Thank you very much, Ms. Omai. Now, Professor, tell us what you make of this. She feels what is happening right now, particularly with the Deputy President, is a duplication of what is in the BBI, or perhaps with a particular reference to the Deputy President, what he could have done while still in government, and therefore promising jobs, water, roads are things that he could have set the ball rolling and then come out and told people what he's doing and perhaps more. But on the other hand, the implication here is also with regards to previous campaigns, previous elections. All we're hearing right now isn't very different from what we've heard in the past. So what do you make of that?
Yes, I think the garbage truck is very appropriate analogy of what's happening now. I think for the first time in this country, well, not necessarily for the first time, but one thing that is actually evident is that we don't have leadership at all. In this sense that...
well, do we not have, or is it just bad leadership?
Exactly. Well, I mean, bad leadership can be leadership. Moi was a leader, for example, and he was a bad leader. But there's also no leadership. Chaps are just clueless. They want to lead for the sake of it.
Okay.
Yeah, because as far as I'm concerned, what our leaders should be asking themselves is why, first and foremost, why do you want to lead us? Why do you want to be a leader? What do you see as our situation, our problem, our reality that can be solved through leadership? And then you as a leader come in and say, fine, I mean, this is the situation of my country. This is what I believe has to be done to turn around that particular situation. And I feel at this particular point in time that I'm the best person to actually take the country forward in that manner. Basically, when you listen to our leaders and what they're saying, it's sad. They can't even diagnose what the problem is.
They're disconnected from the...
Leave alone the solutions that they're putting on the table. If you ask those people, what is the problem with Kenya?
Exactly.
These things that Kenyans can see clearly, I mean, the indebtedness, the poor governance things that you're talking about, impunity from government, excessive corruption, and so on. You know, even just diagnosing the problem and then starting to say, okay, fine, you know, as a country, this is where we need to go. Some things may require dialogue. Some things are obvious. You know, some of them are just rule of law and better governance and so on. Again, when you go to the promises that DP is making, DP is in government actually, and it is, it's a pity because if DP was to engage Kenyans honestly, he should actually go back and say what actually went wrong with the government.
Right.
That brought us to this particular point in time where we're choking as a country and we know we're doing very, very poorly economically and so on. That sort of honest diagnosis would be very useful. There are also some things that they did. This is not to say that you know, the government just scored zero and everything. Yeah, that sort of diagnosis to say, look here guys, and not to quote it with all sorts of political verbiage, you know, to say, look here, we ran this country, this is the model that we're having for economic and social development, you know, international relations, rule of law, this is the approach that we actually took.
Yes.
And this worked, this didn't work. Yes, so I'm going to fix 1, 2, 3, 4 things. But when you come in and just tell us, you know, it's going to be wheelbarrows, so what did you do before and why didn't it work? That is, to me, a symptom of somebody who has absolutely no intention of actually correcting the problems that we have and taking us forward. Yeah, because
it feels disingenuous.
And with, I think Ndi and his team they really need to think about this wheelbarrow economics. Yeah, because part of the idea of leadership is to be able to craft this vision, this you know, ideal place where you actually want to take your people to, and rally the people towards that particular vision, and put practical measures in place where they can actually see that yes, this is doable, this is possible, whatever is being, you know, shared on the table is pragmatic. But these guys are just giving lists of things. In fact, that list, even a kid of class 2 can recite it. It is roads, it is water, it is money in the youth's pockets, I don't know what. Exactly. They need to be a lot more serious with the, you know, I mean, Kenya needs to be led by serious people. And we need leaders with a proper vision that can take us to this particular place that, you know, would be much better than where we are now.
Yeah, I would say take us to Canaan, but then that's already taken.
Canaan is one of the promises.
That's already been used. Now, you agree with this depiction of Kenyan politics and the promises from politicians that they are recycling garbage in terms of their promises and presenting them to the electorate as new promises or new things that they will do in the future. We're going to take a short break. On the other side, we shall continue on analyzing the politics of the day and much more as has been covered by the local press. Do stay tuned to Morning Express.
This is KTN News. Looking for a business starter pack to get your business off the ground? Spread the word on your product or service offerings, reach a wider audience and recruit clients and customers with bulk SMSs courtesy of Standard Group value-added services. For only 10,000 Kenya shillings, you get a sender ID plus complimentary 10,000 bulk SMS units with an option of a free API integration to enable you to grow your client base and expand your business through effective targeted messaging. Visit vas.standardmedia.co.ke to sign up and find out more about how you can add value to your business with Standard value-added services.
We give you stories told through an African lens.
The dream that binds us together is for us to enjoy shared prosperity.
Bottom Line Africa seeks to highlight positive and also real stories taking place in the continent and beyond.
Naapa kwamba nitakuwa mwaminifu kwa Jamhuri ya Muungano wa Tanzania.
Every Monday to Friday, we go behind the headlines to bring you news from Africa and other continents.
No country will be safe if any other country in the world still has cases of COVID.
Bottom Line Africa, every weekday at 2 p.m.
I once again urge all Kenyans to secure their health care by registering with NHIF. This medical cover will increase access to healthcare services at affordable rates.
We value your feedback and welcome any comments, queries, or complaints regarding our news content. You can get in touch with us on SMS 22155, call 0719 012 450, or you can send us a letter on Post Office Box 30080-00100, or deliver it to our offices at Standard Group Center, Mombasa Road, Nairobi.
This is a board meeting, a business trip, a negotiating table. This is growing your assets, future-proofing, work attire, a social network. This is an apprenticeship, a business partner, the night shift. Discover business news that's relevant to you with Money Daily from the BBC.
This is KTN News.
Welcome back. You're watching Morning Express. We're talking about the editorial cartoon on the Daily Nation this morning that implies that all the promises that are being given by politicians in this campaign period are just recycled rubbish. Mr. Manyasi is in our I&M studio. Could you give us your what's on your mind when you see this cartoon this morning? Is there truth to it?
Yeah, Trix, if you were to think about it from that perspective, then you will know that, for example, there are not many things that are new that the politicians are saying. Yeah. Probably I have said that the biggest tragedy that ever happened is that the voters keep sabotaging themselves. And what I mean by that is that the voter will always go by rhetoric. They will always be given promises, and when they are not fulfilled, when they are given other promises, they do not question the promises that they're being given now vis-a-vis what was given before. So the voter in the Kenyan context will always be the loser because they do not question anything. They go by emotions other than brain. Right. Most of the times they follow things that then ultimately, when life becomes difficult, they start questioning the same leadership that they embraced and cheered upon. So yes, ultimately, before the Kenyan voter becomes more enlightened, I'm not saying that they're not enlightened, but in terms of connecting their lives with the election and connecting the election to leadership and connecting leadership to the economy, until the Kenyan voter starts making connections to those things and why their lives of tomorrow are dependent on the decisions they make today in an election. Unless they start making those connections, they will still be treated to theatrics around promises that sometimes don't make sense. Promises that sometimes are not realistic. Like, for example, after the 2022 election, one of the realities that Kenyans will be alive to will be the cost of debt, the amount of debt, the growth of the economy, the issues around corruption, and all these things as we speak today are not being spoken to. And yet these things are going to have a direct bearing on whether Kenyans will get what they are being promised or not.
Mr. Manyasi, except
and so what I foresee, yes.
ANC party leader Musalia Mudavadi, you are right, not many are focusing on the problem that is actually leading to an economic crisis for the common mwananchi. So, but when you look at the popularity of these candidates, I doubt that Musalia Mudavadi would be at the top. What's the problem with our electorate when it comes to reasoning out? Because it's very clear the problems we're experiencing right now are stemming from the heavy burden of debt.
And you rightly put it, and that's why I keep saying that Kenyans sabotage themselves, because if you start having economic discussions like the topic we're having right now, may not be the most popular topic with the electorate. And therefore any candidate then, yes, it's not exciting at all, any candidate then who comes with such discussions might be considered as boring. People have always considered Musalia Mudavadi, they'll always say he's a nice man, or he's a peaceful guy. You know, things that do not add up in terms of fixing people's lives. Instead of saying that Musalia Mudavadi then is the person who is speaking the truth about what we need to see and hear, people will start saying he's nice. You see, and that is the tragedy of how then the electorate finds themselves in a position where someone comes and excites them and ultimately delivers nothing, and then they start complaining about life being unbearable. It will take a while before we actually get there.
Yeah. Hopefully we do sooner rather than later, or before the upcoming election in 2022. Now let's move on. Speaking of democracy, with less than 10 months to elections, the concept of negotiated democracy, widely used by the Somali community, is in full swing in Wajir County, with clan members holding talks to nominate individuals who will represent them in the elective posts. Our reporter Ahmed Hussein visited the Mantan community endorsement of former Governor Ahmed Abdullahi as a gubernatorial flag bearer in 2022 and now reports.
Negotiations, the Mantan Council of Elders have given their blessings to former Wajir Governor Ahmed Abdullahi as the community's preferred candidate for the gubernatorial position.
Cognizance of the political atmosphere in the country, we, the Mantan community, nominate the first governor of Wajir, His Excellency Ahmed Abdullahi Mohammed, to be the governor come 2022 general elections, inshallah.
Mimi leo nimejawa na furaha kwa hii hafla ya jamii ya Mantan kunipa idhini na fursa kwa wakati mwingine kugombea kiti cha ugavana ya Wajir County 2022, inshallah, Mungu akipenda.
The Council of Elders gave the former governor the mandate to seek re-election among a host of candidates. Abdullahi is now expected to lead the community in forging strong alliances with the Ogaden and Ajuran communities.
This endorsement is a critical endorsement. It allows me, together with my elders, to pursue unity by building alliances with other major stakeholders in the county.
The endorsements come at a time when the county has been engulfed in a leadership row pitting the current governor Ahmed Ali and the former impeached governor Mohamed Abdi, who in September this year stormed office claiming he was still the bona fide governor. However, credited with the success of devolution in Wajir, Abdullahi will now lead the community's quest to retain the county's top seat come 2022.
Wakati wa 2013 to 2017 ambaye Ahmed alikuwa CEO ya hii county government, tunajua kwamba rating ya Wajir government at the national level haijawahi pita number 2, number 3.
Rais Uhuru Kenyatta amekuwa hapa, amefungua project 9 kwa siku moja, na ameongea katika bunge ya National Assembly kusema kwamba devolution mfano yake iko Wajir.
After a myriad of clan-based nominations, the clans will then go out to form alliances with other communities in a bid to capture the top leadership position. I'm saying KTN News.
Right now, they're calling it negotiated democracy. And I venture to argue that that is something that is already happening in other parts of Kenya. It's just not widely accepted or obvious, or it's not even being named as negotiated democracy. When you look at the calls for unity in the Mulembe Nation and all the wait for Uhuru Kenyatta to endorse so and so, I mean, isn't that what they're doing up north, Professor?
Yeah, thank you, Trix. I think if I was still teaching at the university, I would encourage students to study this, governance students to study.
What's happening in
Kenya? To study this negotiated democracy, particularly in northern Kenya.
Okay.
It is very fascinating. I mean, before I come to the broader Kenyan context, it's very fascinating, and I must confess that I believe that most of the times it delivers results. Okay. Sometimes it doesn't.
Okay.
Of course, I mean, the first governor of Wajir, Mohamed Abdullahi, who I happen to know quite well, was a very solid candidate for governor. Of course, he ran the county relatively well, put the structures and systems in place, despite the fact that it was actually identified by his clan.
Yes.
And again, if you look at how he ended up losing again, it was because of the same negotiated democracy.
Yes.
A clan is coming to say, a governor has performed extremely well, and the other clan says, no, now it's our turn. And I think that's the flip side, that sometimes it works against very good candidates.
Because it's based on consensus.
Exactly, it's based on consensus.
They agree on something.
Exactly, and then also because the negotiation is happening amongst different clans, it's also based on that thing that it's now our turn.
Yeah.
Regardless of how good the person who was in office is. You remember Abdikadir Mohammed? Abdikadir Mohammed was bundled out of politics because his clan decided that it would be somebody else,
right?
As a member of parliament. Of course, there are also situations where it actually doesn't work, but works in a more complex way. Let's look at Mandera.
Yes.
Across board there with Ali Roba. The clans didn't endorse Ali Roba. So we went head to head with them.
Yes.
Yeah, because the guy was saying, look, I mean, I've done a good job. Why are you removing me?
Yes.
Just because it's somebody else's turn. And of course, we went directly to the electorate, appealed to them, and they elected him. But now the trouble was, all the other candidates, the MCAs,
yes,
are endorsed by other clans, they're from other clans and so on. So he was ending up.
Now he has to work with.
Exactly, was ending up in this situation where, in fact, there was no. I think there was no, or just one candidate from his party. Everybody else was from those other parties endorsed by the clan. And it was very interesting because I was having some conversations with him, and I was asking him, how does this work? I was expecting these guys to impeach you.
Yes.
He said no.
Yes.
The issues that he's discussing, Tricks, I mean, the issues that he's implementing, the policies and so on, are also negotiated, just like his candidature.
Okay.
So the clans also come in and they've got their priorities. They say, fine, in this area, this is what we want. In this area, there's some development we want, 1, 2, 3, 4 things. And that then becomes very useful because society has avenues of negotiating what they want directly with government. And the point I wanted to make in relation now to the rest of the Mulembe nations, the Wiper nation, whatever it is, what we need in this country are strong institutions.
Okay.
What we are talking about, whether we call them negotiated democracy or whatever it is, in the North are institutions that people respect. Those clans and how they do their things, they're not ad hoc. They've got a leadership, and they can actually give direction.
Right.
But now the problem we have with the rest of the country is that we don't have institutions. The only institutions we have are some fickle political spaces.
Yes.
Then what this does now is that this becomes negotiation amongst individuals, as opposed to negotiations on behalf of the people.
Right.
So that's one thing that we can learn from the clan negotiations, not just with the Kenyan side, but even the broader Somali nation.
Absolutely.
But one also has to be very careful because this also becomes spaces for autocratic rule by imposing on people. That leadership gets captured and imposed on people.
Indeed, because it reminds me recently when the leaders from Western Kenya came together and they ended up endorsing Francis Atwoli as their spokesperson, and then we had Malala coming out and saying, "What we don't need that,"
Would the people have endorsed Atwoli
as a spokesman?
It was just a small group of fellows who had hung out with Atwoli.
Yes,
endorsing him.
It's very interesting, and the role of kingpins as well comes into play. Ms. Womai, what do you make of this situation and some of the gatherings that we have in various pockets of Kenya that come out in an attempt to pick a leader that they will support? Is this reflective of what the people actually want, in your view?
So we must really appreciate the fact that, and I must say I admire these people because they're really organized, and that shows that they have a way of running their own, their own spaces, so that they're able to pick leaders that they feel are more fit to push their agendas. But as Prof said, the downside of this is that it might be used to sideline or disenfranchise a certain clan. Because if you look at in the Bible, the Israelites were the chosen of God. So that ensured that every other leadership sort of were not linked to godliness. So if this really happens all the time, and certain clans will be having an upper hand over others. And that might find that even people with ambitions to become leaders and really could deliver and maybe have greatest ideas on how to transform the society might not get that chance to become that leader that they need. But on the upper side is that we have seen the politics that goes around. People just pick because of handouts. Maybe they got handouts, because maybe they are aligned because of certain, this person is charismatic, but at the core point and where it really matters, they are not people focused, they are not people oriented, they are not development oriented. So in that scenario, these negotiations really, the negotiated democracy, really sort of like sieves sieves the people from, the selfish seeking leaders by putting or maybe advocating for leaders that, are development oriented. For instance, that community, the Mantan community, they are bringing back the former governor who was there in 2013, 2017, because of his development record. And so it is a 50-50. It's a balance between, getting it right and also disenfranchising or maybe holding some dreams or maybe curtailing some abilities or gifts to lead because of maybe the organizational setups of the local communities. And also, I'm thinking that this is something that I don't think it can really apply to other regions. However much slowly it has been adopted, but I don't think it's something that can successfully be adopted completely to pursue that kind of approach. Because as for instance, now the negotiated democracy now from this other side now, it sort of comes out by the coalitions now, the formations, people coming together for certain, but these are individuals' interests. These are individual interests from different parties or from different individuals who already have the leeway to push themselves, but out of their own will, they come together and maybe push a certain candidate. Not that it is written or it is organized from the grassroots for them to assume that leadership position. So it's a 50-50 for me. It is good when it works for the community, but it can also be bad when it works against individuals who can really transform the same community.
Absolutely, that is true. And given the cultural aspect of it, given some of the values in some of these communities that you can imagine, let's talk about women issues, perhaps they would not be prioritized as much as they would be if it was in a normal democracy. Mr. Manyasi.
Tracy, you just pointed out where I wanted to start from. The disadvantage of what that negotiation then brings, because of the cultural aspects, then gender, especially women, are unlikely to be considered for such position. Men, the leadership of the clan is composed of men, and the traditions that go with it will be that then women might not have an opportunity to lead in such positions. That's one. But the biggest advantage that I see is I want to liken that to the ANC, for example, of South Africa, to a point where the party is so strong, such that what the party decides and says could even recall a president. Yes. It's so strong in the sense that what people then sit together and say, as a group, this is what we decide to do, our structures are strong, and nobody goes against it. In the Kenyan context, if a party was to decide to recall a president, there's 99% chance that party members will rebel against that decision of recalling a president because of the powers that come with a president. And yet South Africa is a second world, more developed than ourselves. Again, if I can point out to the Western region, now that it's always a point of discussion, if the the Luya community, for example, had structures that would be respected, if they had structures that would be listened to, if they had structures that would then act as though the way Northern Kenya is acting, there's a very high possibility today that no presidential candidate will think about running without having to speak to them. And so the Luya people lose out because of the fragmentation of the community, because of lack of leadership at that level, because of not having one person speak for them, because of not having a community come sit together and say, this is the person we are fronting to speak on our behalf. If that was available, then probably the Luya people will be having more say in how Kenya is governed than they are today. So it depends on largely how you look at it. It can be positive, it can be negative. The other positivity is that, for example, the people of Northern Kenya, if a governor was to misbehave, for example, they have the right to withdraw that mantle by technically and obviously dictating on who becomes the next leader. And part of why devolution was an exciting thing was because devolution through the governor position was meant to bring power closer to the people and make people feel like they have resources and they have their own power. So at the governor level is where you are likely to see a lot of that other than in other places. So ultimately, these negotiations are good. If you go to countries like Israel, for example, they have always negotiated. There have always been coalitions. And yet that country runs much better. So our problem is not that, our problems, like I said initially, are more on other aspects of life and our behavior and the way we run the economy and the way we steal, more than the fact that there are other factors that then will influence that.
Okay, all right. Now let's circle back to central Kenya. And Ms. Wamai, I like your view on this one. Muturi is faulting Raila on a stipend pledge. That's 6,000 shillings that everyone has an opinion about, it seems. Now he's also dismissed leaders who insist that Mount Kenya region can't produce the next president. Who said we are tired of leading the country, he asked in a recent meeting at the National Assembly, was asking, and of course he is obviously speaking for himself as a possible leader. What do you make of his prospects right now? And is it true that Mount Kenya is not tired of leading and he is a possible leader come 2022?
Okay, so that's a really interesting view from his side.
Yes.
It is true, we are not short of leaders. It is true we can always, forward or support Mount Kenya region presidential candidates. But as the president said a while ago, he's really big on the power distribution, and that he said, we have led for those years. Why can't other people, other regions lead too? So it's not like that we are short of leaders in Mount Kenya region, but it is about time that also we have to experience, or we get to experience, what other leaders from other regions can do. And, we are really, in support the coalition or the negotiations that are happening between Jubilee Party and the ODM Party. That means the chances that Jubilee, which was the major stakeholder of the major party in Mount Kenya region, might not be fronting a candidate and might be supporting or could be supporting an ODM candidate, maybe Honorable Raila Odinga. This is to show that we are not selfish. And this is a point where now we start, because there is that perception that Mount Kenyans, mnaongoza kila wakati, Mount Kenyans, you just want, to dominate the leadership space. And this is time we now give people who have really supported the democracy of this country. This is now time to give other leaders a chance, so that all these conversations that have been going on we can do this, we can do that, we see if our leadership, the leadership that Mount Kenya region has been offering compared to what other regions can offer, maybe it is going to sanitize somehow, because the dominance has sort of brought some or inflicted some ill feelings, or the ill feelings in people. And really, I would have to say that we really get sidelined by being told and getting it rubbed on our faces that we have been in leadership, sitting in government. But when it comes to the real gaining the real issues and the real things or gains that the government offers, you find that sometimes we don't get them, because there is that pressure of not doing things from your backyard to maybe executing them elsewhere, so that people cannot in turn say you're just doing things or you're just carrying out development in your backyard. So maybe when we have some other government or we have someone else from another region coming in, we will have a better position to negotiate. And if you listen to the conversations going on, the other day we had a meeting at a Mount Kenya Foundation meeting at the Safari Park Hotel. And top of the agenda was, what is in it for us, Mount Kenya region? What is in it for us as, because we might not front a presidential candidate, but what is really important is about the Wanjiku. What is really important is about the development of the ground, that will revitalize the agriculture, because we are big on agriculture, that will create an enabling environment for our businesses. So that was the key, that's the key conversation. So it is not about who becomes the president really, or maybe which region brings the president. It's about how well are you able to sit down and negotiate on the let known the development plans that you have. On the issue of the 6,000 shillings, that really has brought controversies from all sides. I don't really see it different from what has been happening within Wajami, is the program for the old people. They have been receiving at least 3,000 shillings, if I'm not wrong, every month. And this one, for real, it has really helped families, because if you look at it this way, this is like a social welfare agenda, whereby we find like a very great percentage for our young people. They are unemployed. And they do not even have the capital, or even the environment does not allow them to do business. So, and these people, they have families. So for this 6,000 Kenya shillings, we can just close our eyes and say, so much money has been lost through corruption and draft cases. And this has just benefited a few. But that shows, and development has still continued, but that shows that there is a lot of money that, if used properly, or maybe if given to certain people at certain time, in 2 months, even somebody can be able to start a business. We know very well, like for small businesses, even 1,000 shillings is enough to start, to start hawking sweets. Yes, and to start hawking sweets, and maybe start a small kiosk, start Mama Boga, a program, maybe start doing something for yourself and earning that 200 shillings per day, earning that 100 shillings per day that you didn't have. So this is sort of a security to this vulnerable youth, because it is not going to be given to everybody. There will be measures on who is more deserving for this money. So I believe this is a really good. This is really good for the vulnerable groups, for the vulnerable youth, because it will give capital. These people really hustle to get just 1,000 per month.
Okay, Ms. Umai, let's get the opinions of our other guests as well on this. Professor Omenya, what's your take on Muturi's bid for presidency to come from Central, and at the same time that's 6,000 shillings? Ms. Omaya has said it could be used for anything, including business, if the household chooses to do that.
Yes. No, thanks, Trix. I think Muturi's bid, again, unfortunately, is just individuals positioning themselves so that they can actually benefit from all these coalition arrangements. That is another one looking for somewhere to land. Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, in fact, I'm actually quite surprised that somebody like Muturi would again push this conversation to where we want it away from. Yeah, because we are not electing somebody because they're from Central Kenya, or because they're from the Rift Valley, or because they're from Nyanza and whatever it is. I think Muturi should be telling Kenyans, what exactly he intends to do, what his manifesto is, how he'll deal with the current situations and so on. Nobody says that Kikuyus are not electable. In fact, the reason why people are tired is because the only thing the Kikuyu brings on the table is being a Kikuyu. And the only thing that a Kalenjin brings on the table is being a Kalenjin and so on. I mean, it'll be interesting that even in these negotiations, I mean, you go beyond positions to issues. What has Mount Kenya One done? What is their program? How are they dealing with that? Apart from business, of course, business is very clear about what their program is. But what is the program for the ordinary people? And then how do you then work that politically so that whoever is in office, can be able to implement that? But all the negotiations now, and not just Mount Kenya, is about what position will I get, and then it's assumed that that position somehow belongs to the tribe. Which is bollocks. I mean, it doesn't make any sense at all.
Ms. Omaya has said it's all about what is in it for the Kikuyu tribe as opposed to who.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Now, I'd like to get the views of Mr. Manyasi as we close the conversation.
I've had there's a time I was talking to a friend of mine from the Kalenjin community. And I was asking, so why William Ruto? And the answer I got probably was the most shocking answer, was that it's because he was promised. I have spoken to a few friends from Central Kenya about why William Ruto, for example. And the answer that I have always gotten is that it's because it's unfair for him not to be given, and yet he was promised. And I go back to what I said initially about why the electorate will always be disappointed. Because the electorate will always be thinking about things that do not add to the questions they should be asking. They have an imaginary perspective of what the presidency should be. But immediately after the elections, today, you will see that then people start complaining about the same things that they should have considered way before the elections were held. And therefore, whether it's a Raila Odinga presidency, whether it's a William Ruto presidency, or whether it's a Musalia Mudavadi presidency, or whether it's a Muthiza Kitui presidency, ultimately, what I can tell you for sure is that Kenyans will somehow be disappointed, because what they push for is not what they expect at the end. And therefore, what they finally arrive with, they start complaining from day one, because in their minds, what they were voting for was different from what the reality was. And I hope that one day we'll get to a point where Kenyans will open their eyes and ears and put their elections, put their cards where their mouth is. Because ultimately, unless we push for the things that when will transform this country, even the people that we elect will come back to us with theatrics, because that's not the scale at which we elected them at. And that is the disaster that has always befell this country.
Alex Manyasi is a governance expert. We also had Professor Alfred Omenya, a governance expert. We had Sasha Wamae, who's a chairlady Young Women of Kenya, bringing the female representation to this conversation, and of course, very deep insights from Central Kenya and of course of